The Virtual Environment Display System is a multisensory interactive display environment in which a user can virtually explore a 360-degree synthesized or remotely sensed environment.
Take a trek through a prehistoric jungle. Tour a house that has not yet been built. It's called virtual reality, and as Jay Shaver found out, all it takes is a special helmet and a glove, and you're off.
But in the not-too-distant future, a helmet like this could help me to believe I'm in any number of three-dimensional worlds.
Virtual Boy. See it now in 3D.
And stupidly, I dared myself to visit the metaverse for a full 24 hours in its current, not-so-great state.
Right now, he's playing Gorilla Tag.
You've heard the N-word?
All the time.
Our kids really don't know when to say when, because we see them on their video games all the time, right?
I think Mark was truly convinced that VR was the future. He saw what we were doing, and he said, oh my God, this is the future of computing.
I am excited to announce Oculus Quest.
This is the future of gaming.
And I'm excited to share with all of you Oculus Quest 2.
You think I'm playing on a fucking laptop? Do you think I'm playing on a standalone Quest? No, I'm a fucking Valorant!
I truly believe in your vision.
We are incredibly proud to introduce Quest 3, the first mainstream mixed reality headset.
The content is what kind of frightens me as a parent more than anything.
The wrong people seem to be making all of the decisions.
Or do you just not give a shit about VR at all right now because you're tired of being mistreated by a bald bloke and this lizard in Paris?
No, don't touch me there. This is my no-no square.
You'll never touch my no-no square again! Initiating self-destruct sequence!
You've probably heard of virtual reality. Maybe you've even tried it. Maybe you liked it, or maybe you got motion sick after 5 minutes and never touched it again. Or maybe you've written it off entirely. I mean, after all, the technology is lackluster at best, especially compared to the price, right? So why give it a chance? That was my mindset for years, up until February of 2022, when I had around $300 in Amazon credit that I was just itching to spend. Having a PC and a handful of other technological projects, there were few mediums that I hadn't gotten into, and I saw virtual reality as the natural next frontier. So, despite my skepticism, I ordered a fresh Quest 2, got it in about a week, and instantly threw it on my head with excitement. As I got used to the controls, adjusted to the lens resolution, linked it to my PC, and inevitably rammed my hand into my bookcase a few times, my skepticism slowly melted away. Soon, I found myself falling in love not only with the medium, but also the amazing experiences the medium had to offer. A year later, I was spending just as many hours in the headset as I was in front of my monitor. I kept finding new immersive games to play, amazing worlds to explore, and met genuine people to have meaningful, nearly face-to-face conversations with. And as I grew closer to the headset, the games, and the communities, I started to ask myself if this was the digital future we were promised. If we were finally approaching that initial vision of the internet, not just for browsing, but for seamlessly sharing knowledge, connection, and experiences. Was this the future of digital connection, not necessarily through a flat screen in front of us, but instead of a world around us? Today, I keep enjoying the platform, albeit in stints, but my passion for it never fades. At the same time though, the more involved I get, the more concerns about VR as a platform become visible to me. Whether it stems from horror stories of online communities and their members, or just general complaints about the lack of big-name content in the space, it always made me question if those complaining had ever tried any of the already available experiences like I had. I understood the skepticism, sure, but I had overcome it. Couldn't others too? And maybe that's exactly why so many people haven't given it a real shot, because they've never experienced why it was worth caring about. Maybe all they've seen is the surface, the headlines, the weird marketing, the stereotypes. But VR didn't start with perfection, and it still hasn't reached it. What it's always had, what it's still building on, is potential, a vision, a future. So if you're one of these skeptics, I get it. I really do. I just hope you can appreciate where I'm coming from with this video. But to give you an understanding of where this space is and where it's currently going, we have to appreciate where it's been first. VR's basic concepts go way back, nearly centuries back if you really think about it. And funnily enough, a lot of these principles weren't at all digital. Instead, the earliest concept of virtual reality can be traced back to early panoramic paintings. You know, those big long ones with Roman war scenes you'd see in something like a museum, I guess. They were painted with the goal of immersing the viewer, whether it be a battle or a sunny landscape. This, in a way, was the first attempt at trying to simulate being in a place without actually being there. Then, in the early 1830s, science happened with the discovery of stereoscopic images, where the brain, when shown two slightly different images in each eye, fuses the two into a single image with depth. This little trick of science led to the development of stereoscopes, and then eventually the iconic Viewmaster. My grandparents actually have one with a box full of picture discs that goes with it. Basically, it was a pair of toy goggles you'd hold up to your eyes like binoculars and click. It wasn't much more than a novel trick, sure, but it still felt like you were peering into a new environment. Around the same time, in 1935, Stanley Weinbaum wrote a sci-fi story called Pygmalion Spectacles, a story about a pair of goggles that let you see, hear, smell, and even feel another world. Basically, this guy predicted modern VR decades before the technology existed. The 1950s and 60s, though, was when real examples would start to come to fruition, the first being the Sensorama. Think of it as essentially a giant arcade game, except you stuck your face in it, and in return, it blasted you with smelly wind. Not the most comfortable thing ever, but it aimed for immersion, and it honestly did a good job at it. Just a few years later, the first headsets emerged, although nothing like what we know today, with little or no motion tracking and mostly for military use. By the late 80s, the industry got the name that we all know today, virtual reality, with NASA, Sega, and Nintendo entering the space. You've probably heard of the Virtual Boy, the chunky red headset thing most people associate with early VR. Being a massive flop, it was discontinued within a year, and Nintendo would probably rather you forget it existed. Despite the flop though, the idea lived on in pop culture through movies and books like The Lawnmower Man, The Matrix, and the later Ready Player One, all stories that included people using virtual reality to escape and solve problems at the same time. And then we reach what is arguably the nexus event that started modern VR as we know it. The Oculus Rift. Launched in 2012 by Palmer Luckey and the 2.5 million doubloons he raised on Kickstarter, this headset alone would spark a wildfire of passion for VR that would spread rapidly in the following years. Just 2 years later, Facebook bought Oculus, and others like HTC, Sony, and Valve jumped into the industry as well, releasing headsets like the PSVR, Vive, and Index. Competition would push technology to get better, and the prospect of virtual reality was at an all-time high. It seemed like things couldn't get any wilder. And then, in May of 2019, right before the Index, came arguably the biggest shift in the industry, the biggest game changer since the Rift, with the release of the original Quest. For the first time ever, no wires were needed, no bulky, powerful, stupid expensive PC. VR had gone standalone, and more importantly, VR had become suddenly accessible. The Quest 2 would release only a little more than a year later. That's where I got invested, and it quickly became one of, if not the most sold VR headset of all time. And since then, the space has only grown more. A lot more. Today we have headsets with eye tracking, numerous full body tracking solutions, and even face tracking. Valve as a company, with the Index, continues to play large in VR efforts. Meta, formerly Oculus and Facebook, released the Quest 3, which basically does everything the Quest 2 did, but better. And yes, even Apple, being the safe company they are, stepped in and released their Vision Pro. But even in this era of tech giants, some of the most unique and most accessible breakthroughs in VR come from individuals, small teams, and passionate developers. Stuff like Slime VR, an IMU-based full-body tracking solution, and many, like too many, prototypes of VR gloves keep the scene uniquely fresh, weird, and community-driven, all at the same time. So yeah, it's a long way to come from 2 images or 1 really big painting to where we are today. And really, there's still so much further to go. But even with all that history and evolution behind it, a lot of people still ask if the technology is worth it. Like, am I just going to buy a headset, use it for a few months until the novelty wears off, and then let it collect dust? It's a valid concern, sure, especially given the technology, cost, and what expectations you're bringing into it. Coughing up that money I hit my fan. Coughing up that money for something you may or may not enjoy is a big hurdle. I know it was that way for me too. VR hardware today is pretty solid compared to where it started, but yeah, it's still not perfect. I mean, I still run into weird issues where my headset just completely loses tracking or a controller randomly stops working for a second. And then even beyond the little quirks, VR headsets, especially when they're stock, can be bulky and uncomfortable, lack battery life, and aren't very friendly to those who wear glasses. Usually you have to buy further third-party accessories just to make headsets usable long-term, at least in my and many others' opinions. But when you take a step back and, again, consider the progress, those frustrations get a little smaller. Not long ago, you needed a beefy PC, a mess of cables, and plenty of space to take advantage of VR. Now, we've got standalone options that don't require a PC, but can still utilize one, advancements like inside-out tracking, better lenses, the improvements keep coming. Even if these leaps in technology aren't always massive, new features do come along. Even those extra options like full-body tracking are becoming more and more accessible, more precise, and most importantly, cheaper. It's an option for further immersion that exists for those that want it. And yes, sure, big companies like Apple, Valve, and mainly Meta are the key players controlling a lot of where the industry goes. But as I mentioned, the community is still in play here, creating cheaper and sometimes more effective alternatives to the solutions some of these companies offer. If you're going to have an issue, if you need something for a certain price point, I can almost guarantee someone out there has made it work and made it better. So no, VR and its physical hardware isn't perfect. It's not up to those sci-fi standards, but it's not out of reach either. No longer some distant dream. It's getting better, more accessible, and in some ways more personal all at the same time. More so than the hardware, one of the biggest complaints I hear about VR is that there aren't any good games. But honestly, to me, there's a difference between a good game and a game produced by a brand name studio. If you're expecting big titles to be dropping VR versions and spin-offs every year, you're probably going to be disappointed. VR doesn't have the full attention of AAA studios, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing here. For example, when I first got into the scene, I happened to join right as Bone Lab came out. And man, what a first experience. It introduced me to realistically reproduce VR physics, letting me interact with objects, has some really fun fights against NPCs with realistic weapons, and explore beautiful, fairly detailed environments. And then on top of it, it had baked in mod support. Then you got code mods like Fusion that added multiplayer. It was crazy, having that physical freedom and sharing it with others at the same time. This single game really sparked my passion for VR and set the precedent in my head for what VR could really accomplish. And beyond that, there's just so much more variety. Want immersive, story-driven cinematic gameplay in an already established world? How about Half-Life Alyx, a game that, despite being years old now, still holds its own as one of the best gameplay and visual experiences in VR. More into FPS high-action shooters we're used to, kind of like a Counter-Strike or a Valorant, there's Veil VR, which in my opinion does the best of nailing that familiar, fast-paced, high time-to-kill experience. Or maybe you're into something more traditional, like Pavlov, which also has great community-driven mod support. Maybe you're into something simpler and calmer, Beat Saber or Walkabout Mini Golf, while seeming incredibly simple on the surface, are actually rather immersive and still get you moving. And of course, if you're looking to be social, there's always VR chat. No matter which way you lean though, intense or calm, nearly every experience manages to tap into that immersive magic of VR, not only in the design of the game or the visuals, but also the interactions with others and the spaces that these experiences can harbor. And to be honest, nowhere proves this better than VR chat. I know, the public perception of this game, the game that I'm speaking to you through right now, it's not great. The memes, the chaos, the absolute degenerates that inhabit it, all of it. There are real issues here, don't get me wrong, but it's incredibly over-dramatized by others. A lot of those videos highlight the minuscule, on-the-surface bad simply for clicks, for your engagement, without ever looking at any of the good. This is a whole other can of worms that really isn't the point of this video, but I definitely want to talk about it in another. But underneath all that noise and negativity lies something beautiful. Incredible, mind-bending, unique, user-built worlds. Not made by lifeless studios, not made to sell you on anything, simply made by people, just like you and me, who wanted to make new places worth exploring, bringing to life worlds only previously in their imaginations, now made real. Pretty special, isn't it? So maybe VR doesn't have all that many high-budget, studio-backed games right now, but what it does have is a unique, growing space for creativity to thrive. A place where developers, artists, and even total beginners can build not just games, but experiences. social hubs, communities, and memories. It's not empty, it's just still getting filled. And it's happening in a way we're not entirely used to. And that brings me around to the part of VR that, for better or for worse, defines it more than anything. The people.
Bombs away, blowing up the White House on the list. I need it right now. Shimmy, shimmy, y'all put me in a box in the Hall of Fame. Bombs away, blowing up the White House on the list. I need it right now. Shimmy, shimmy, y'all put me in a box in the Hall of Fame.
When it's all said and done, the hardware is cool and the games are unique, sure. But what really makes your experience what it is, what continues to define every modern aspect of VR as a medium, is the people. It wasn't something I really thought about when I first got into VR, but the more time I spent in those spaces, sharing those moments, the more it became obvious. Whether it's the squealing kids and the middle-aged dudes you get teamed with in Vale, the chaotic, laggy, yet entertaining Bone Lab Fusion lobby you wander into, or that random VR chat instance you find world hopping and the small group of people that you soon find yourself having a real conversation with. It's the people that shape your experience. It's still a game, yes, but VR adds something different into the mix. It's that presence it gives you, and everyone around you for that matter. You're not another name in the kill feed or a disembodied voice. You're there, present in that room. You nod, you wave, you give high fives, you physically react. That one small difference adds so many layers to the whole experience, making it that much richer. It turns a quick match into a real strategic fight or a small stroll through a world that seems like the edge of the universe into a real conversation. My most memorable moments in virtual reality didn't come from discovering a game mechanic or some hidden area during a campaign. They came from the people I was playing with. From laughing at ridiculous avatars or watching as that one kid in the fusion lobby gets strapped to a helicopter using the constrainer gun, to just hopping into a world to watch YouTube or a movie. It's the kind of stuff that these funny moments or trolling creators just won't show you. The things that can't be scripted. And yeah, I'd be lying if I said VR chat wasn't a big part of that. Again, say what you want about the chaos, drama, and reputation of the game and its community. I get that, but it's easily still one of the most creative, socially rich platforms in virtual reality, hands down. Entire worlds built by individuals, nearly endless possibilities of avatars, and spaces that, whether a group of people or inside four walls, feel as lovingly made and intentional as real-life counterparts. It's wild and unpredictable, but inspiring. The broader VR community, for that matter, follows this same formula. Developers, modders, casual players, they all make it what it is. VR feels an awful lot like the early internet or YouTube, where it's all a collaborative ecosystem, not driven by advertisement, engagement, and corporate agenda. Don't get me wrong, there's still some of that, but it's refreshingly more sparse. Instead, virtual reality is powered by something more meaningful, a shared interest in making something unique. Something that can convey just a little more thought, or at the least, a good time for you and some friends. And no matter where you go, it shows. VR manages to cut through the noise that other platforms drown in. There's no aggressive algorithms, no scrolling, no infinite feeds, just you and others present in that moment. And with that presence comes authenticity, or the opportunity for it. Others choose to abuse anonymity. Regardless, the medium and the community is still somewhat young, still rough around the edges in places, sure. But it's that feeling of continuous improvement that makes the platform feel all the more alive. The people of VR aren't just part of the experience, they are the experience in a way. It's easy to look at VR today and think of it as a gimmick, a novelty, or some half-baked offshoot of gaming and technology. But if you've given the headset a try, if you've really explored what the medium has to offer, you know there's more happening here than people give it credit for. Virtual reality, effectively, is shaping how we interact with each other through virtual spaces, how we communicate and share online experiences. And this shift isn't being driven by excessive marketing or the media, which usually works against virtual reality, but by the people who actually care. People who create for this one platform, making it what it is, even if it doesn't appear the most polished at first. It's not a replacement for real life, and it never should be anything close to that. Like any other technology, it needs moderation. And yes, the technology isn't perfect, but it's growing rapidly. The platforms continue to evolve in all sorts of directions, but the constant change is what makes it exciting. That feeling of being there while it's still growing. You kind of get the feeling that what you're seeing won't be it, what it ends up being. It's only the beginning stages, and it'll get better because people are making it better. And that alone makes virtual reality worth your attention. So no, virtual reality isn't some unfinished project or gimmick. Not to me, and probably not to the thousands, if not millions of others who have laughed, created, and explored these virtual environments. It's not always perfect, and likely it never will be. Sometimes the people can be off-putting and the selection can seem mediocre. But sometimes it can also lighten a mood, bring friends together, and provide experiences not found anywhere else. VR isn't the headsets, the trackers, the games, or whatever else. It's you, the people, the friends we make, the strangers we meet, and the moments we get to share in unique places. This space is only as good as the people in it, and that includes you.